This is a true bucket list moment for me because this is the Defender Octa, the biggest, the baddest, the most capable Land Rover Defender they make. And right now I'm driving a $170,000 Land Rover through a river. And not just a little baby river, this is a pretty significant crossing here. We are about to cross over the top of the grill here. And just like that, we cruised on through. That was pretty mega. Wow. Well, clearly we made it through the river. Wahoo! And that is one of the coolest parts about this Octa, is it actually sits taller than a standard Defender, and it has a whopping 39 inches of water fording ability. That Ford Bronco Everglades that we own, which has the raised breathers and 35-inch tall tires and the snorkel, that's only got 36 inches of water fording ability, so this thing is pretty nuts. Now the Defender lineup has a huge range of engines. So you've got the base 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, you've got the 3-liter inline 6, you got the 5-liter supercharged V8. The Octa has none of those engines. Instead, it has a 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8 actually sourced from BMW. Now in the Octa, it makes 626 horsepower and 583 pound-feet of torque, mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission with a torque converter, of course. Joining us on this off-road adventure today is Sam. And Sam, can you introduce yourself and kind of tell us what you do?
Hi Tommy, I'm Sam Allen. I am the brand director for Defender North America.
So that's a really fancy way of saying Sam is CEO of Defender, which has got to be one of the coolest titles. In the four-wheel drive space, you've got stuff like the Raptor, which is kind of the ultimate desert runner, right? And then you've got stuff like the Rubicon, which is kind of the ultimate rock crawler. What is the Octa to Land Rover? What does it mean?
So, really good question actually, and something that a lot of thought went into before we started this project. You know, Defender has now been back in North America for 5 years. Moving with modern times, the Octa is really designed to take it to another level of, you know, modernity and tough luxury. So it's bringing that toughness, but in a more controlled, refined manner. It's like the epitome of an off-road car where you're not being thrown around horrendously all the time. It's coping. We're taking the 75 years of evolution of the technology and the engineering into this car.
Yeah.
And we're moving really into a tough luxury space.
Why the name? What does that represent?
So the Octa is a name that is formed or based from an octahedron, which is the naturally occurring shape of a diamond. And so taking that representation of what is really tough and not precious but luxurious, and that's where the Octa name came from.
All right, Sam, now things have gotten interesting. So one of the cool things I have to give you guys a lot of credit for as a brand, as we go on a lot of these press trips and the off-roading is like a log that they'll put in a parking lot. And we are climbing this cliff here in this new Octa, and we are really starting to see some of that capability of that Defender come through here.
Tires grip.
Look at that! And that's that rear locker activating, and then we finally got into that V8. And correct me if I'm wrong, currently the only way to get this twin turbo 4.4 is in the Octa.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can still get the 4-cylinder and then the inline 6.
And we've maintained the AJ133, so you
really?
can still get the 500 and the 525. The more.
So that's going to be in the lineup.
V8s, yeah.
Unreal.
We maintain that.
Okay, very cool. I learned something new today.
And then the Octa gets the 4.4. It's only available in the Octa, and I think it'll be always only in the Octa.
We're about an hour outside of Grand Junction, Colorado, so we're like a good 6 hours from Denver here. And a lot of people would skip this area and go right to Moab, Utah, because that's also about 6 hours. But some really cool, beautiful spots out here, and there's nobody. Like if you've ever fantasized about like driving through a Western movie, this is very much that. It's a really cool place, and this trail we're on is probably about a 5, some places a 6 out of 10. And if you want to find the best trails in your area, check out Onyx Off-Road, the sponsor of today's video. It integrates with CarPlay and you know exactly what you're getting into. A V8 in a Defender, it's just the right character. You get this kind of low rumble as you cruise along, and it really makes it feel like you're driving something special instead of just another off-road worthy SUV, right? Because you can get a Bronco, you can get a Wrangler with a V6, and they're great vehicles, incredibly capable, but a V8 in a Defender is just such a unique experience. Now, this 4.4 is unbelievably powerful. It's like a wave of torque when you get into that power band. It's also, and I can't believe I'm saying this, a little refined, a little too refined. So even when I go into Octa mode and we open up those baffles in the exhaust, you get a little bit of rumble out the rear end, but very little turbo noise, very little intake noise. It's just a very quiet experience. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but the supercharged V8 that Defenders have as well, that's a crazy experience. You get this berserk whine and they're just barking and shouting. This is not that. The easiest way to tell an Octa apart from a standard Defender is gonna be right here, these fender flares. Now, this vehicle sits a full 2.7 inches wider than a standard Defender. Now, there isn't any change in the body in white or the sheet metal. These are an over flare that cover up the wheels, but it does give the Octa a very unique stance. And then because it sets it over the width restriction for a standard passenger vehicle into that heavy duty class, they had to actually incorporate marker lights. And what they did is, much like the Raptor, they gave it these 3 marker lights in the grille. So if you're driving along at night and you see 3 orange lights coming towards you, you know you've got 626 horsepower bearing down on you. Now, over here on the hood, where we typically find the faux kind of diamond plating, we do actually have this cool kind of carbon fiber finish there. We also see it here on this little side panel and Defender. This is an Edition 1 Octa as well. And then the wheels are unique to Octa. So this is a 20-inch wheel, and you can get the Octa in either a 20 or a 22. And if you get the 20, you can also spec it with these Goodyear Wrangler tires. This is going to be my choice, of course, for off-roading. It's a 275/60 R20. It also limits the top speed to 99 miles an hour. So if you want to unlock that whole 155 mile an hour top speed, you're going to have to get the street tires. Now, as we come along the side, Octa is only available in the 4-door configuration as a 110. There's no 90 or 130 available, and then you're going to notice the Octa badge throughout. Now, being a skier, or at least a former skier, this really looks like a black diamond like you'd find on Vail Resorts, but that is the Octa badge, of course, kind of referencing the octahedral diamond that Octa is named after. Now, out back, we're also going to find the enhanced fender flares there that kind of give it that wide body look. And then as we make our way around to the rear, of course, we do have the full-size spare tire. We also have 2 integrated recovery points, in this case painted in this kind of gold finish, and then it's got quad exhausts down low, which have been optimized for departure angle as well. So what's cool is they don't stick out beyond the rear fascia, they're tucked in nice and flush, which is very, very cool. When we pop the door open on the Octa, the first thing you'll notice is that this seat design is very different than any other Defender. It's actually more of a one-piece bucket than any other setup I've seen. It's kind of this integrated back and headrest, and then this first edition also has these carbon fiber accents along the backrest, which is a pretty unique look. Now, these seats, I have to say, are much nicer than I expected them to be. They look kind of aggressive for what they are, but they really do a nice job of hugging you, and they never feel too pokey or street car like, which I think is awesome. Now I'm gonna fire up the Octa, push the start button here, and there's a couple other things that really initially off the bat differentiate this car from a normal Defender. Now, if you look at the steering wheel, and this is this ebony and khaki finish on the steering wheel, it's green on black. This button down here is unique. So we got the Octa logo on this little button underneath the steering wheel. If I push it once, that's going to put the car into dynamic mode. So it's going to open up the baffles and the exhaust. It's going to change the traction control calibration, the throttle calibration, and now we're ready for some high performance street use. However, if I then push and hold the Octa, something interesting is going to happen. So that little logo is going to start to glow red. The paddle shifters are going to start to glow red. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but through those little glass tips, you get this red backlighting. And now Octa mode has been engaged. Now, this is not an on-road mode. This is like an off-road desert running setting. It's going to loosen up the shock absorbers. This is a hydraulic actuation in the actual air strut to control body roll and suspension articulation. It's going to loosen that up. It's going to create some more body roll, but it's also going to create the damping you need for fun off-road use, which is very cool. So you do that by pushing and holding the button there. And what's interesting is that it still is an air suspension system to raise and lower the vehicle, but the dampening capability is totally different than a standard Defender, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so it uses that 60 dynamic suspension. So instead of just having a traditional shock and strut, we have a hydraulic system that's controlling the compression and rebound pretty much consistently, and basically with a semi-active system being able to respond to what it's experiencing to keep the most traction and the most even weight from wheel to wheel.
And what's crazy about the setup, and this is what I got totally wrong, is there is no sway bar.
There's no sway bars, that's correct.
At all. So all of kind of the roll mitigation is done through that hydraulic, essentially like a kind of a shock absorber. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
You got it 100% right. Yep.
And then the other crazy thing about the suspension is it's not just the actual strut that's different. There's differences in the hardware, right? Like the control arms.
Yeah, so control arms are different, and obviously there's some more electrical components and stuff to be able to measure kind of speeds and compression rates and how fast the wheels are moving, and you know, you can tell that we're on washboard or corrugated roads and start to compensate for that and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely some real differences.
Land Rover has done some stuff that's really right from an off-road standpoint in this Octa, and they've done some stuff which I think that they could improve on. First and foremost, we got to talk about the ride quality. Now, when you're on kind of rough, rutted out service roads, when you want to go fast, unreal. Especially in Octa mode, it's very much first-gen Raptor-like. Kind of's got this float to it, which is, it's magic, right? Now, when you get it on a more technical trail like we were on this morning, you really start to feel the weight and the width of the vehicle. So it's a great thing for tip over and for these high speed stuff that, yeah, it's 2.7 inches wider, but it also greatly reduces the maneuverability of the vehicle. And it's also 800 pounds heavier than a standard Defender, and you really feel a lot of that weight in the front end. It's a heavy beast, and it's also $170,000 and not my own car. So while I'd love to be out here running steel bender, I don't want to make that conversation to Land Rover saying, hey, sorry, your car's stuck on a pretty rutted up trail. The other thing I think Land Rover, this is a tough one for me, but it's got a real off-road tire, right? It's a Goodyear Duratrack RT. It's a great tire. We've done some stuff with it in the past. It's got a really good sidewall. But the smallest wheel you can get on an Octa is a 20-inch wheel. And if you look at the way the brakes are incorporated, you're not going down to an 18. You're not going down to a 19 on this vehicle. This is realistically as small as you're going to get, which is good and bad. It's got a great look, right? It's good for on-road dynamics. You got a small sidewall. You don't have any kind of weird lateral jiggling from the sidewall. However, I would love it if you could get the Octa suspension and Octa wide body kit on a standard Defender with 18s, right? Because I'm a little notorious for what happens when you go off-road in Defenders on 20-inch wheels. I'm not going to enjoy the rest of my trip. I'm going to say that right now. Oh, and I don't have any grip now. G'day! Different spot. I took a different line on it. Same exact thing happened. Now, I'm glad that you can get a real tire on this that's speed limited to 99 miles an hour, that you could air down a little bit, but you're not going to air down that much with this limited sidewall, even though it is a pretty big wheel. And then the only other gripe I have with this thing is the front recovery point, right? You look at it and you're like, oh, sweet, it's orange, it's right, it's easily accessible. It's a cover. So it's awesome that you've got front and rear recovery points, but just make the actual recovery point bright orange instead of putting a cover on it. So those are my complaints. Having said that, the places you can take an Octa, at least, you know, from what I've seen today, is more than anyone is realistically going to take a $170,000 Octa. This thing is incredibly impressive off-road, and I do mean it when I say this. I think out of the box, it has one of the best full-time four-wheel drive systems out there. I know the best system you can have is like a Bronco or a Wrangler with front and rear locking differentials. This is not that. But what Land Rover can do with an open front differential and then an automatic locking rear differential, It's unbelievable. And when you couple that with the ability of the Octa to quote unquote act like a sway bar disconnect where you can get the most articulation front and rear, it's pretty cool. And keep in mind, like Bronco Wrangler, you can get a disconnectable front sway bar, can't do anything in the rear. The Octa has got those 4 corner hydraulic capabilities, so then you've got the rear being able to kind of articulate a little bit more as well. So there is some cool stuff going on with the suspension of this vehicle. You still end up a little bit when you get in the off-road height, you end up topping the suspension out a little bit, like we've experienced with pretty much every other Defender in the past, but it's not as bad. And with the increased length in the control arms, having that kind of additional wheel travel up and down with those wider flares means that when you're really pushing it, not 10 miles an hour over Onion Creek, but when you're actually pushing it, it's pretty cool. This is a pretty serious bit of kit, and yeah, I'm excited about it, genuinely. I was a little off put when I first saw the Octa. I'm like, oh, it's going to be really expensive and it's going to have some fancy seats, and I'm not sure it's going to be it. But after the little taster I've had today, I really want to get this thing out on the trail, and I'd love it if Land Rover put some rock rails on it for me. But I think that there's a lot more to be unleashed in this vehicle, especially if you could just drop down the brakes a little bit, 18-inch wheels. Oh, this thing would be pretty awesome off-road. A lot of this is going to be standard Defender, apart from some of the carbon finishes, which is optional. I don't really love the carbon, especially in a vehicle that weighs 800 pounds more than a standard Defender, which is already crazy heavy. It's a little weird. Now, when you look at the screen in this Defender, this is an 11.4-inch display. It's actually got a slight curve to it, and it's got, of course, wireless Apple CarPlay, which is integrated very, very nicely. But the actual display, pretty easy to use. I love this tile page, which are kind of like shortcuts to everything. So to water sensing, to vehicle dimensions, trailer towing, that's all very, very cool. Or I can exit Apple CarPlay here and then go to the home screen, and then we have these tiles as well where you can access all of that. Now, of course, we've got our full suite of off-road gear. The Octa does come standard with the center and the rear locking differential. We've got our terrain response information here if you want to figure out what everything does. Configurable terrain response, all of that. We also have the cameras, including off-road cameras, which gives us those 3 views for the front and for the front wheels, so you can see what's going on there, including the see-through option there. So it's a pretty decent display, but what I like about it is we still have some physical controls below the display. So check this out. We still have physical climate controls now with this dark chrome ring. Same thing with the ventilated seats. That's all there, incorporated in these buttons, and it, of course, does have a volume knob over here. And then, like I said, I think the material fit and finish is really good. Now, it's very clear that with the Octa, Land Rover is targeting Mercedes with the G-Wagon in this vehicle for kind of that big, bold, over-the-top kind of luxury machine. And it does have everything you'd expect. It's got the cooler, it's got the wireless charger, it's pretty nicely equipped, and it's got some banging seats. And I do mean banging because there's speakers in the seats that'll actually vibrate you, give you some more sense of those tones. So apart from the Octa mode and the suspension changes and the engine difference, the Defender is pretty much the Defender. So of course we've got the big swing out tire carrier back here. We've got the standard Defender trunk back here with, of course, in this case, the rubber floor lining. So it's all very practical and usable Defender. The big changes is, of course, going to be underneath that hood. So the Defender Octa is a pretty serious bit of kit. It's wickedly fast on the road. It's got a pretty good burble out of that engine, although it's not as crazy as I'd like it to be for the Halo vehicle within the Land Rover lineup. It's got a really nice interior and clearly pretty decent capability. Now, we've been out here on this tour, right? And I'd really like to get this vehicle out to Moab where we're at without any supervision and kind of let us loose on some of the usual trails to see what it is capable of. But I think as a whole, it's done really, really well. It's got the right four-wheel drive system. It's got the right suspension. That's been a big deal. But it definitely has the wrong wheels and brakes, because for off-roading, even though it's an aggressive tire, I'd love an 18-inch wheel on there instead of a 20. So I kind of wish like you could get the Octa package, but with the 6-cylinder, smaller brakes, smaller wheels, maybe cheapen up the interior a little bit and save some money on the MSRP, because $170,000, you're pretty deep into G-Wagon territory, which is very stiff competition. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who you think of Gavin behind the camera, and head over to alltfl.com for more reviews. We'll see you next time.